Broke, yes.
Oh, it broke?
I don't know,
Somebody
we had
broke it?
Listen on you.
Well, it won't be the first time I've been limp. So, it's 7 o'clock. Obviously, it's a work session on economic development, so I will call this meeting to order. Should do a roll call.
Greenmeyer.
Here.
Mortensen.
Here.
Rachel.
Here.
Kilby.
Here.
Fish.
Here.
Joe.
Here.
Bonnie.
Here.
Clayton.
Here.
Right. So the goal of this session is, as much as anything, is to obviously we broke into 3 teams, present the ideas, and then hopefully take those ideas, consolidate them into one common cause on how we want to identify the path going forward. At the end of the session, it would be nice to kind of come up with a plan of what we see and how we see it, ultimately how we're going to fund it and kind of how we're going to hire for the position. Just on a couple of kind of housekeeping things this morning, it got brought up at the committee of the whole that was a change order for D Lagoon of $138,000. Andrew and I did speak with Bolton and Menk, and they've decided that they're going to handle that in-house. So there will be no change order for the D Lagoon project. So that's a good outcome for the citizens, saving $138,000. So with that, I don't know which deck have you got loaded up first?
All of them.
You got
I'm ready for anyone that wants
Okay,
to
so
start.
do you want to start, Mike and Al, do the order of how we did roll call? Is that good with you?
Sure, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Do you want us to come and present at the podium so it's a little more?
It's up to you. I mean, I don't know.
I think I will.
Yeah.
I've never presented from the seated position,
I know.
I guess.
I hear you.
So, yeah.
Your Honor, does this mean he's stepping down? I'm just kidding.
Is it what? Sorry.
Is he stepping down? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Wait, that's Mark humor, is it?
Yep.
We'll see how this works. This one? Forward and back. Forward and back.
I can always override it from answer.
Yeah, if we need to. Thank you, Your Honor. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm speaking here not for myself today, but also for Mark Layton and Al Krameyer as we present. You put us in a group, which we appreciate very much. I think the thing that I should start with for both the council, community, staff, is this isn't an all or nothing deal here today. This is about us coming together as a group to be able to say, hey, what do we think is the best going forward? So as I present here today, I don't want you to think that we are the know-all, be-all of everything. Everybody on this council has equal worth, and everybody on this council brings quite a bit to the table. And so we're giving you one option that we think is appropriate, and we're hopefully going to see 2 or 3 more options that we think are as appropriate as well. So we're going to start it off going forward. So hopefully everybody can see it. Can you see it as well? I wasn't sure when I put it together what our optics would be. I want to give just a little overview of our city, just to go back, way back to the 1800s, not to give you history. I'm not a history professor, but our city grew out of the late 1800s with the RTC and people coming here for the river. As it got into 1895, there was something in our city that just set our city apart from everybody else, and it was the RTC. And the reason I bring that up today is I want to see if we can do something to set ourselves apart again in 2025 or later that would have that same impact that it did back then. We also seen Fergus Falls prosper after World War II. As veterans came back and the soldiers came back to our city, we started to see a lot of other businesses grow. Otter Tail Power, the Victor Lundins, all of these staples of our city that are important, that we got to remember that maybe today we can make some of those staples again, just like they did in the past. And then in the 1980s, we found quite a bit of prosperity in this city. And you know, take my presentation with a grain of salt, 70s, 80s, early 90s. But when we had a mayor, Mayor Ferber, which was here, and I don't know the exact amount, others would, 20 years or so, this was the city's mayor. And what he did for our city is something that we should cherish for a long time. When he, and Jim would know maybe a little bit, but as he would walk around the city, he would say, this is our town, this is my town. And he took great pride in everything that he did, whether it was from bringing the veterans home, whether it had to do with the mall, whether it had to do with other businesses. And I think if we can take just a little bit, go back to the 80s, not with the hairstyle, but take a little bit of how that mayor loved this city, I think that'll go a long ways for our council as we go forward. Then we found in the 2000s, we continued to grow. We had Target, we have the Home Depot, we have Shopko. We had some of the larger corporations that decided Fergus Falls was a great place to be. And that was tremendous. And some of those are here today, and some of those are not. But now in the late 2020s, we've seen a decline of our city as far as an industry and business-wise. And I don't think there's anybody to blame. There's no blame here on anybody at this time. I don't think we could have stopped Target if we wanted to. I don't think we'd stop Shopko. Many of these were national things. But some of these things, I think, need to wake us up to what do we do in response to that? What do we do in response to bring our city back to a level of prosperity again, is what you'll hear from me. So I just wanted to give an overview of where our city has been. Our city has been on the growth for many, many years, and possibly on the decline at this time. Oh, Lynn. There we go. So why the decline in business in Fergus Falls? Is it the economy? Very well could be. Is it the population? It could be. We've watched Alexandria grow from 10,000 to almost 15,000. We've watched Detroit Lakes grow from 7 to 10 or 11, 12 where they're at. It's a possibility. Is it the demographics? You know, do we have a different population in this city than other cities? It very well could be. All of these things are part of that. Do we not have the workforce that we need? That's talked about a lot. Very well could be. I don't know. Is it the city involvement? Has the city been involved too much in business that comes to this city, or have they been involved not enough? And that's something for us as a council to explore. And is it sustainment? When a company comes to our city, or they come to downtown, or they come to wherever, can they sustain what they need to stay in our community? And those are the questions I think we have to ask if they're able to do that. But this is concerning to me, all of these things, and why we've lost business, why we haven't retained all of the smaller businesses. That's why we're here today. This is our why. This is our chance as a council and as a city and staff. This is our chance to change the trajectory and try to do something different for the community that we haven't done in the past. So I'm looking, and the individuals that worked on our plan, we're looking for a new course of action for Fergus Falls. And I think we'll just say it. We're looking for an in-house economic development. I don't think that'll be a shock to any of you here today, and probably not to you on TV. We've been talking about this for several months. We need that one person to help our city grow. Somebody that can lean on us, that we can lean on them, and we can work together collaboratively as a city and as a council to make this happen. That's our opinion today. And we need someone to see a desire to change occur in many areas. I'm not just talking retail. You'll hear me talk about retail. You'll hear me talk about industry. You're going to hear me talk about housing too, which is not at the top of what we look at for economic development from our group. But they have to have a passion to change for a purpose. Not just to do this. I don't want someone to come in here and just have their job like the public works director, community development, even the administrator. I want someone that will come in here, team up with us to have a real passion to change with a purpose. And we need attention to detail regarding growth. I'm talking severe attention to detail. When they're in this position, they need to be able to read, hey, this is what's going on down in Minneapolis, this is what's going on in Bismarck, this is what's going on in Sioux Falls. Attention to detail to growth, not just a shotgun approach to what we're looking at. And the ability to reach beyond our borders. I'm not looking for a 25, in our group, is not looking for a 25-mile radius that we look at to grow Fergus Falls. I'm looking for as much radius as we can. I don't care if they call somebody in Texas to come to Fergus Falls. I don't care if it's a California company that wants to leave California. This is where the growth has to be larger and bigger, and the vision bigger than just us here. As I've talked to other economic development people in the region, that's how they do it. They look broad. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, and I hope our group doesn't either. And the ability to respond quickly. That's one of the things you'll hear in my presentation today, that when you bring something into the city, I'll give you as we go through a SWOT analysis here in a little bit, we got to have somebody be able to move very quickly. That's something Greater Fergus Falls could do. They could move quickly, and you'll see some of the comparisons today. That will be one of the key issues that we have to be able to overcome here. Lynn, I'm concerned. I hit it again last time it went. Okay. So in order to accomplish our goals of our group, I'm not saying this is the council, I'm not saying this is the city, we'd like to see one full-time city employee that would be the head of economic development. They would fall under the city administrator, Andrew Bremseth, and they would work very closely with the building, engineering, and community development of Clara. This is not to replace anybody in the city. This is actually to bring somebody into the city to give the staff that are here now a greater ease of what they do and also assist them in what they do. This is someone that's going to come in and help our city, not disrupt the staff of this city. That's not the goal of this. They're going to aid each department in their mission for the city of Fergus Falls. This is going to help Clara do her job much better. This is going to help Andrew be able to answer questions about development, and the building guys and engineers. This is going to be a huge asset to them to be able to have somebody sitting right in the city so they can go to them within a few seconds. They have to have knowledge on how to lead economic development. That's one of the main accomplishments of our goal. They have to have knowledge on how to structure economic deals, and they have to have knowledge on how to sell our city. This is a unique individual. This is not just a salesperson. This is not just someone that knows how to do economic development. This is not just someone that's like an attorney that knows how to put together deals. This is a complicated process where this individual comes into the city. They're going to need mentors. They're going to need other people to interact with to be able to accomplish this. They may have to interact with people like Casey that we had in West Fargo. They may have to interact with other economic entities from St. Cloud or prior Greater Fergus Falls, things that have been done. This is not just the sole person can do it by themselves. There's no way, because it's difficult to find this type of an individual. But that's how we accomplish our goals. Lynn? Okay. I promise I'm not doing it. I don't think I should.
There we go.
That's it for sure. I won't touch it
I have your
anymore.
presentation, so I'll just
Okay.
follow along.
Sounds good. I'll stay away from it here. What does this employee look like? Well, surely, they have to be friendly, they have to be dedicated, they have to be committed, okay? So this cannot be an introvert person that just sits in their office. In fact, if they do, we're in a lot of trouble. This person has to have somewhat of a sales background. That doesn't mean that they're out there as a telemarketer, but they have to understand what it means to sell something to someone, what it means to get somebody to go from no to go. That's important for this individual to have, because really what they're doing is they're selling our community. They're selling us on who we are. They need to have somewhat of a real estate background, because they have to be able to understand, hey, this piece of property here is important to this. This is how we acquire this property. This is how we can utilize this property to increase economic development. They have to understand land acquisition. So not just a realtor, They have to be somebody that knows how to go in and make a deal and say, hey, we need to split up this piece of property. We need to acquire the front part. We need to sell off the back part. We need to be able to do that. And they need to do it not just when a company comes. They need to do it before a company comes. So they look at the vision of the future and say, hey, you know, that piece straight across from Walmart out there that's open, maybe that's a piece that we need for a Culver's. Maybe that's a piece that we need for a Home Goods. Maybe that's a piece that we need. And so they have a vision of land acquisition that is different than most economic developers. They need to have the ability to do contract negotiation. They need to know what that looks like. They need to know when they sit down that, hey, this cap rate on this type of building or this type of interest on this is important to make this deal happen. And most of all, they need to love Fergus Falls. They need to love Fergus Falls. And when I was talking to other economic developers, I'm like, hey, this is a unique, very unique person to find. And I said, I don't think we can find that. And they said, you will find it, but the biggest thing you have to have is someone that loves your city. It can't just be a job for them to come in, so they have to love our city. Lynn? Okay, the focus of this employee, from the standpoint of the city, as the city directs them, they're going to look for commercial acquisition. I think we know what that is. We're going to look for commercial properties, commercial entities to come to our city. I think that's one of the things that, the first two things I'll talk about, commercial acquisition and retail acquisition. Those are the two things that when the community looks at us and says, hey, are you doing anything? Just like Scott Kwame said the other day, hey, you bring a target back, people will see that, hey, it's working. But it is part of what's working. They're going to look at it and say, hey, are we growing as a city or are we declining as a city? So these are two of the main focuses that will be involved for this employee. And then they're going to look for industrial relocation or setup. And so this is more of your ANOVAs, your vector windows, your different things like that. These are the drivers of a community that bring that tax base to us. And when you look to some of the other communities that we're starting to that we never looked at as our competitors, when you looked at Alexandria and some of the other ones, you can see the industry relocation or startup component that's important. So this employee needs to be not only versed in bringing in that, they need to be versed in others. They also need to be versed in apartment policies and housing policies. This is an area as a business individual and a business owner I'm not strong in, but they need to have that component because they will go hand in hand with some of the industrial relocation and some of those things. But if you notice, I put these things in an order of where our group felt there was some priority in commercial, retail, industrial, then there was apartment and housing. They need to be able, and this is something that just from my standpoint I beg for, is they need to be able to create and administer a TIF policy for us. We as a group, we just went through a TIF issue with Mr. Herzog. I shouldn't call it an issue, just a TIF process with Mr. Herzog. And I think there's some things there that were not fair to Mr. Herzog. I think there was some things there that weren't fair to the council. And I think there's some things there that are not fair to the staff. And I think once we have an individual like this, and if they control the TIF policy, like what does this city really want to give TIF for, they will be able to come up in front of us as a city employee and say, hey, this meets the mark for TIF or this doesn't meet the mark. And I think this would be one of the greatest assets for this this body at this time. They're going to be in-house, so they're going to give council presentations. This is one of the things that I think will separate the difference between like a 501c3 that's outside of the city and what's inside the city is we don't have that connectivity of being able to say, hey, we would like you to present in front of the council this night. Andrew Bremseth will say, hey, I need you to present this to the council. They need to hear this on why you're thinking this. Clara will come to them and say, hey, would you present with us to do this? We're looking at a piece of property. I think that's so paramount to having the council and the city be able to have that. And then the last thing we need from this employee, they need to handhold that business all the way through, from the minute they make that first phone call to them to when they're in the ground and after. This person should be part of that process all the way through, and they should be able to lean on city staff as they come through the door with them, as they go through and ask questions of Andrew, they ask questions of Clara, they ask questions of Bill, they get down to building, they get into zoning. They should be there the whole way. A business cannot in our city go halfway and then get dropped somehow. And I'm not saying that because of staff, I'm just saying that it can happen. Or that business can get halfway through the process and say, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. And so that cannot happen anymore on our standpoint. So how do we support somebody like this? We support somebody like this with a 7, 9, 8, 10. The board number doesn't matter so much, but this individual that's inside the city needs to have their own sounding board that's inside the city with them, that's not connected to the city, but it does relay information to them. And I think the part of the board that they get their information from and they hammer things out in the boardroom is very important to this process as well. Not only are we looking for an individual with land acquisition, retail, all the different skills, but we need a board that has those type of skills as well. So I put together kind of a rough draft of what that would be. One member needs to be retail, and I'm talking bigger retail. I'm talking a district manager, regional manager. I'm talking someone that is involved with Home Depot, Walmart, Fleet Farm, some of these bigger entities, to be able to sit on that board and say to us, hey, you know what? In other communities, we're doing this. In other communities, they did this for us. Hey, you know what? My corporate office is talking about we might downsize in the next 3 years, our target. This would have prevented, if you had someone like possibly prevented someone like Target being on one of these boards, you could have seen some of the wind coming. So they have to be involved, some of these bigger staples on this board. The other thing, we have to have an industry member. That can be someone from Innova, Vector Windows. I know Jeff is very involved, Quality Circuits. You got to have some of our industry personnel that are on that board so they can tell you that, hey, these are the things we're seeing in the industry world. These are the things that you could go for. On that. You need to have an entrepreneur that's on there. There's a huge difference between a manager, a leader, and someone that knows risk. Entrepreneurs know risk, and that has to be on there. So when he gives advice to our economic development person, he could say, hey, I've seen risk like this. This isn't as big a risk as you could take, but they have to have someone that isn't locked to not moving, that can guide that board and say, hey, I put $1 million, $2 million into an investment and it's worked. So an entrepreneur needs to be on there with that type of mindset. We need to have someone that's in there that's sales, someone that knows how to sell, someone that says to the economic development person, hey, if you're going to close this deal or you're going to do this, this is the way I would do this. You can only get that from someone that's in sales that knows how to do it. And then we need a business owner or a member of a business that is housed here in Fergus Falls, but also maybe has a second business or third or fourth in another community if we can find him. Someone that's invested in our community, someone that can guide us as they look at other communities and how they're working, and they can say, hey, this is working. This is how you do that. We need somebody from the housing building. We need a construction guy. We need an apartment guy that can say to us, hey, you know what? We've got plenty of apartments, we got plenty of houses, or we need to go. We need to really focus on this. Or we need them there when the economic development person comes back to the board and says, hey, we've got a huge company here that wants to come with 200 employees. We need to have somebody that we can turn to say, hey, that's doable. We can do that. We can build that, or this is how we do that. And then the last member is the mayor. It goes back. I don't think the council should be on this committee, in my opinion, and maybe the others can speak for me. But it goes back to the 1980s, and I know that's funny to say that, but it goes back to a mayor that loved our city, a mayor that wherever he went, he said, welcome to my city. Someone that when he sees this, he will say, hey, welcome to our city. And so I think the mayor has to be on that board as well. So let's do just a little SWOT analysis, and it's just a very general. This is not by means extensive at all, just short for this morning. So with a SWOT analysis, if you're not familiar with it, you look at the strength, weakness, opportunities, and threats. And so we're going to look at both There we go. We're going to look at the strengths of what an in-house economic development person would bring. And there's, you could add 3 to these, 4 to these, 5 to these. I just kind of hit it so we get kind of you get the image of where we're at. The strength is they have to have the ability to be housed in City Hall and have instant communication with everybody I just said. Instant, right now. Sometimes you can make a phone call outside of here, but if people are not there, you know where they are and you can talk to them very quickly. That's a tremendous strength for our city to have that. That someone that's looking out for that is there. Here's our weakness. An economic development manager will have to wait on times for the city council and staff. When Greater Fergus Falls, and I don't know all their makeup, but I would imagine they could move at an instant moment, just boom, 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 boom. This will be a little bit slower, so we have to be aware as a council that they will move just a little slower on some things than they would have at other times. This is an opportunity now to take city funding to help with the economic development efforts of this position. This is something that we'll start to see the difference between breaking apart from a 501c, and I've been up to Greater Bemidji, Greater Fergus Falls, different things, and the ability for the city to generate some revenue for this individual. So it gives that as an opportunity to take some of that funding with the city. The threats: will continue to lose ground in neighboring communities that want retail, industry, or expansion. I use this as a threat that I think if we don't look at the broad picture, we're going to lose ground here like I feel that we've done over the last number of years. What's one of the other threats that I could add to this that I had on there earlier? You don't have a lot of community involvement in this position. The community is relying on putting together the right framework, just like you do with the building, finance, public works. They're relying on the city to put the framework together for success. So it's not a broad community aspect to this employee. The community can have a broad aspect to what would we like to see in the city, but this employee is really under the direction of Andrew Bremseth and the council. Next one. I did a quick SWOT analysis. If you took an economic 501c3, whether it's a Greater Fergus Falls, whether you set up another entity, whether you morph that, one of the strengths in it is they have no city involvement, no city direction. They do what they want. It's the same as like my company or whatever. You don't guide me or direct me. I can make a decision very quickly. I can do that. We will not have that with the person in-house, but they have that ability on the outside as a strength for them. One of the weaknesses, and I think this is one of the key weaknesses for like a 501c3 that's out there, is they must fundraise to stay afloat. They have to have a generating revenue to come. And there's nothing wrong with that, but you'll see that it makes in my opinion, and the individuals that are with me, it loses some of the focus of what an economic person just needs to focus on. They have to fundraise on that entity to be able to stay afloat. The city economic one will not have to fundraise and do that through private funds. What are the opportunities for a 501c3? They have the autonomy to spend the way they want to spend it. They really do. They can move very quickly. They can say, hey, if we have money for this, let's spend it. We can grab this, we can do that. That will not be the case with our in-house economic, but you have to have that money. The next one, the threat, you have to have that money there as that 501c3 to do it. In-house, we will hopefully have economic drivers or different things that we'll talk about that will fund that person. How do we pay for an in-house? I think Mr. Layton can speak to this a lot more than I can, but we threw together just a few things. You have $50,000 allocated to a 501c3. That's a possibility used towards this position right away. You have an extra $20,000 or more shifted from the HR director or manager. I think that's going on. I'm trusting staff issues here. I'm not privy to all of that. You have possibly a shift of $100,000 or more from an engineering standpoint, and I don't want to be speaking for city staff here, but that's just some of the aspects of it we're looking for it here. So let's cut to the chase. What does it cost to hire an economic manager, economic person in the city? I think the low end will be $80,000, $85,000. I think the high end will be 110, and that's what it'll take to get somebody in-house to do that. What's our long-term financial goals? I might make everybody just freak here with this next one, but this community and I'm not saying it today, but I'm going to float it out there. If this community really, really wants to grow, and they really want to change this city once and for all from an economic standpoint, so you never hear anybody again say, hey, why are we behind? Why are we losing this? Why are we losing that? I'll let you just read what it is there, but it's a citywide sales tax of 0.5% that goes to economic development. This is something that Greater Fergus Falls, other entities, they don't have that ability to do that. This is something that us as a city, as a council, as staff, have this time to do this for our community. This is a major question, a major determination down the road of what do we want to do and what make our city the way we want to make it. Future goals, that sales tax would fund everything from that economic development person to the city projects. And what do I mean by that? We're not taking, what I mean by it, I'll be very honest, I'll be straight out. That's going to fund their salary. That's going to fund the land acquisition if we have to buy something, if Best Buy or Menards or somebody wants to come to this community and we don't own that land at this time as a city to help them, and they want that, that will allow all of these larger city projects to happen. When you put in your pocket $1 million, $1.5 million to be able to do things for economic development, most people would just salivate over that. And that's the ultimate goal, I think. And then that will fund that position. Next slide. Things we can't do to help Fergus Falls anymore. I believe that we're in a time that, and I can only say this, and we can't send money over to a 501c3 in my opinion. Now, it has nothing to do with my thoughts of Greater Fergus Falls, Greater Bemidji when I've been up there and some of the other ones. These people have done everything they can. They worked as hard as they can. They're great people. I've met with them. I've talked with them. This has nothing to do with them. But when I look at this from a business person standpoint, and I say, if I'm so invested in my business, would I turn over the growth of it, the expansion of it, the filling of it, the sales of it, would I turn that over to an outside entity and then just step back? And I was thinking about that last night. In my billboard world, there's no way with all the work and all the effort and all it means to me that I could turn that over and just pay people money to take care of it for me. So from a business standpoint, I do not believe that the city is in the best position to do that. I'll talk a little bit more about how I think that 501c3 is in a great position to help the city, but not total control. We cannot allow an outside entity to lose a deal from a lack of funding. So what I mean by this, and I won't speak for West Fargo, and I won't speak for Costco, and I won't speak for some of those things, but the city had to have an intricate part of that deal and an intricate part of the money and an intricate part of the negotiation to make that deal happen. When some of these larger corporations are looking to come some places, we cannot rely on someone handling that deal that maybe doesn't have the revenue or the money to close that deal, or the revenue or the money to buy that piece of property to close that deal, because it's very important that you do that. And that's some of the things that an in-house economic person will take care of. One of the other things we can't do, I just believe we have to have, I think staff have to have more of a hands-on with an economic person. I think the council needs more hands-on. And I think the community would actually have an input in who this is. We can't do that anymore. And we have to handhold. I've already talked about that. We can't sit idle, the last one. This person has got to be moving. I think when you heard from Casey that, you know, she's in the chair less than 50% of the time, she's making deals all over the place. One of the unique things when she was down here the other day and spoke is when we were walking out, I said, hey, do you have time for coffee or this or that? And she said, no, I've got to go immediately because there's a big deal that's occurring. And I asked Casey, I said, hey, this is Fergus Falls, 14,000 people. I don't know if the big deals are there. I don't think we could do the big deals And she said, absolutely not. Absolutely you can. The big deals are there. It's just how do you go out and get them? How are you prepared to receive them? How are you prepared to work with them through the contracts and the negotiations to get it done? But they are out there. They are out there. And that's not coming from me, because I tell you what, I need to have some proof that we can do it, but it's coming from someone outside that says that. Next slide. So what I would like to ask the council, and I'm not trying to sell you here, but I want us to look at this. This is a winning, proven process. Other communities do this. This is not just my idea. You've seen it from West Fargo. Many other communities of 20,000 to 50,000 do this. Sure, are there smaller communities that don't? Is there other communities that have had great success in doing other things? For sure. But I would like to see that this is a proven winning success that can happen. Join other major cities. We need to try something different to spark the fire. We need to try something that if we're really serious about growing our community, which I am, we got to spark the fire of this. This is a radical change. People don't like change, but this is what I feel is the way we will do that. The other thing that I hear when I talk to other economic people in the area, and I'm not an economic person, I'm a land building billboard guy with sales, but they said, my gosh, you're one of the companies that, or you're one of the cities that sits right on I-94. What a luxury to sit on I-94. And that's the thing. You know, we have the beauty of the river, which is awesome and great, and past mayor had done a lot of work to develop what this is, because that's one of our assets. One of our other assets is we're right on I-94. And we talked before about that steel company that had looked at St. Cloud, looked at Alec, and ended up in West Fargo. And I don't want to see that happen to us anymore. Last thing, there's no excuses this time for us to fall short for our city. Please allow us to consider an economic development person for our kids, for our future, for our community, and for all of us. Please, please, I ask you of this. You know how important economic development is to me, and it's just because of the business aspect, the way I look at it, the way I've developed my business from one billboard to where they are now, the way I've looked at where I work with industries all around the region, whether it's North Dakota, South Dakota, Minnesota, and the way I want to see my hometown, where my grandfather came in 1870, how I want to see it be at the pinnacle of the best it can be. That's why that's brought up today. Please don't take me as the expert. Please don't take your thoughts of me as a person and your dealings with me in the past as a way to shut this out. Please take this as one part of economic development that this city needs, and then take the things that we've had in the past and utilize them, whether it's Greater Fergus Falls, the business services, but all of it. But take it and look at it for the city, not for Mike Mortensen. So that's all I had. Thank you. I think questions. I want to allow Mr. Layton and Mr. Kramer to add to this in any way. I probably threw them off with a number of things today and what we were doing, but I want them to add to it if they need to.
Thank you, Mike. Al, Mark, have you got anything you wish to add?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thanks to Mike. He's a great presenter, and you can tell that he's used to speaking in front of many people. And, you know, there again, too, it has to do with the love of the city and want to see us succeed. You know, one thing Mike did touch on that I'd like to also elaborate on, too, is our location, I feel, is so unique to many other cities that we can attract people, attract businesses. You know, like I've said, hey, we are the gateway to the lakes on the west side here. We've got the ecosystem of the prairie to the west, we have the lakes, and we have, 1,100 lakes in Otter Tail County. I mean, this has to draw people. And then put on top of that, what do we have, 5 exits to Fergus Falls off of 94? I mean, that's amazing. And we have plenty of land that we can use. And we need somebody that can put this together. It was probably a little over 2 years ago, going up to Bemidji and visiting up there. And I had gotten contacts with some of the people up there from Greater Bemidji, David Hengel, who's the executive director, and he and my brother worked together when he was the president of Greater Bemidji, and we had great conversations. You know, and the way this stuff works, you know, going back to board members, you know, to get people in these different categories, what their specialties in. You know, there's also bankers. There's also attorneys that can fit in there too. But I like the idea of looking outside, you know, theoretically, or I should say, just basically speaking, we got to look outside the box here. We can't just look in Fergus Falls. Let's take some ideas from other places or to try to work with them. As it was stated up in Bemidji, hey, let's not compete against others. Let's work with them to make the whole region better, and then we can get some revenues on our property taxes. We need economic development. I mean, it's amazing what that community did, and you know, different ideas that we had received. There was, I believe, 4 of us or 5 of us that went up there that day. I did have to miss a council meeting that morning because we were up there, but we were doing something for the city. And that's our goal, is to do something for this city. I grew up here. We moved here in 1967. I want to see this place succeed and not go downhill. What kind of threw me a little bit when I realized that when the cyclones, they called it back then, came through in 1919, our population was 12,000. We're at 14 now, and that's because of annexations. So, you know, we got to look at this, you guys. And I hope that you can get behind us and get behind all of us together. You know, we were united in this when it came to our retreat. I had great feelings after that retreat. And everybody was on the same page. And I think we need to get back to that train of thought and move this forward. Thank you.
Mark. We need to keep moving if we can.
I'll stand down then. Thank you.
No. Don't stand down.
I know what economic development is. I know what it isn't. I've learned a lot in addition to 40, 50 years of being a business person. If you were to take a bicycle wheel off the bike and have beads on every spoke and laid it on the axle and spun it like a top, all the beads just go, poof, they go to the outside of the rim. No one knows what's going on. No one's working together. At this point, what we want to do is, if you've seen, if you will, the quarter drop at a mall where everybody throws their money in it and it goes around and around and around and comes to the center. This is what we need. We need collaboration from the city, the industries in Fergus, businesses in Fergus, the chamber, more importantly, the schools, all the other groups that have a position here so that we can work together united. This is nothing new. It's just simply a collaboration of all the centers of a community versus everybody going a different direction. I appreciate this opportunity to visit and discuss this in front of the council. Your Honor, I appreciate this opportunity to present our program, and I hope something good comes out of it. Thank you.
Well, I think there will be. Right. Does anybody have questions, or we can kind of have it more as a general discussion at the end? Okay. Right. Are you going to go, Laurel? Are you a spokesperson?
Sure. I think I'm going to stay here because I'm going to do better reading, but I printed our slides,
Oh,
so
right.
if that's helpful. Here's for staff. Okay, and ours is not going to be quite as well presented as Mike's because I don't have that talent, so I should have gone first. But the other thing I will say is we might have more in common than the public thinks because I use the same format that Mike did on his PowerPoint. So this council has a little more in common than the public might be thinking at this point. So it is amazing. We did something where we sat down with Ian from the SBDA and did a little more of a deep dive into not only the next steps for the community for economic development, but what needs to be done to actually accomplish our initiatives. And so, and it's written out a little more because I'm supposed to be in Atlanta at Market right now, so Scott was gonna have to read it. So we're a little less bullet pointed than they were. But I'm here. So we're going to start with the basics, and we're not gonna touch on necessarily everything, but just kind of move with me if you're game with that. Thank you, Lynn. And we're not gonna spend a lot of time on the basics, but kind of echoing what Mike and his group said, when you account for annexation, where we are now is our population has about been stagnant for 20 years. Unemployment in Fergus Falls is higher than the state average. The average number of jobs in Fergus Falls has not increased in the last 9 years. And retail offerings in Fergus Falls have significantly declined in the last 10 years. So those are kind of some overarching basic reasons that we're talking about these things. Overall, big picture goals, we need to increase the number of living wage jobs in Fergus Falls, reallocate tax burden from owner-occupied homes to more reliance on commercial property tax base, and we need to increase our overall property tax base. So to do that, we identified a game plan of 10 initiatives for economic success in Fergus Falls. And we broke it down. We did a SWOT analysis, but then broke it down in a way that talks about our reality, our barriers, our opportunity, and that came in a weird font. I don't know why. Very strange.
Not like that.
It's not like that on my printout. And then our direction. And today I think we're just going to talk mostly about our reality. The barriers are on the screen. I think everyone knows what our barriers are in our area, and we've talked a lot about that at length. And then we're going to talk about our opportunity and how to implement those things. So our first initiative is economic development, leadership, and structure. Our reality right now is Fergus Falls has experienced uncertainty around who leads and coordinates economic development efforts. Roles have shifted and partnerships have stalled. While many care deeply, efforts have lacked a consistent leader, impactful results, and a shared direction. Our opportunity is a clearly defined, empowered, and well-supported economic development director that can rebuild trust, drive action, and align efforts across the city, county, and partner organizations. With shared expectations and accountability, this role can be a long-term force for good. By hiring an economic development director through the Port Authority and reactivating the EIC, the much-needed focus of growing the tax base and reducing the tax burden on the residential taxpayer can be prioritized. To do that, we need to create a clear and transparent position with measurable goals, a defined budget, and shared oversight. The role will focus on relationship building across all spectrums. The position priorities should be 50% of the time spent on new business development, including funding sources and business outreach, specifically concentrating on our industrial zone growth to increase our tax base. 40% of the time should be spent on supporting existing businesses to gain a better understanding of business needs and to assist in expansion efforts. The remaining 10% of time should be in community project support, such as taking a supportive and supplemental role in housing, workforce, and childcare efforts that are integral to a successful economic development initiative. The community project support should be in partnership with the community development staff and include a component of involvement with the Visit Fergus Falls Board. I'd also like to add the chamber. Hiring an economic development director through the Port Authority with a budget offset in the general tax levy to do so at no increased cost to the taxpayer for the position or the departmental budget will offer the city the best return. This can be done by working with the tax levy group and other committees. The economic development director will report to the city administrator. The city council will appoint an EIC, which will give the economic development director more flexibility in transactions and negotiations. The council needs to ensure this person has the tools to succeed and then trust them to lead. Set the foundation now for long-term leadership and stability. Our next initiative is workforce development. Our current reality is businesses across Fergus Falls can struggle to find and keep employees. Wage pressures are real, and some key roles, specifically doctors, are filled by people who don't stay. Youth can lack a clear pathway into the local workforce. Our opportunity is to build bridges between schools, employers, and career seekers. Actively promote Fergus Falls to remote workers and mid-career professionals. Many residents have careers outside of Fergus Falls. We need to make every effort to minimize the bedroom community impacts this can have by recruiting industry that supports good-paying jobs here. The workforce is the fuel for every other kind of growth. Commit to pathways for substantial growth in our local workforce capacity. To do this, we need to grow pilot internship and youth employment programs with the high school and M-State. Partner with both entities to explore a career academy structure like the Moorhead, Minnesota program and facility to feed the Fergus Falls workforce. Convene employers to identify wage and skill gaps, explore regional and outside funding to support workforce solutions, identify the strengths that set Fergus Falls apart from other communities, and formulate a sustainable campaign to attract people to locate here. Our third initiative is housing availability. Our current reality is Fergus Falls is a good example when it comes to housing of which comes first, the chicken or the egg. Housing and economic development go hand in hand. Both studies and lived experiences are clear. There's not enough inventory of market rate housing for first-time buyers, working families, or seniors. Those wishing to take a step up in housing or downsize in retirement are finding it hard to do so in our community. A large portion of our current housing needs updates and investments by property owners. Fergus Falls lacks dig-ready neighborhoods with builders ready to expand our single-family housing stock. Many blocks have struggled with eyesores and unkept properties. Homeowners that want to stay in Fergus Falls and make changes to their properties can find it hard to do so under the current code to meet the needs of their family. Kind of skip over that barrier piece. The opportunity we have for housing is with the right mix of readiness, incentives, and messaging. Fergus Falls can guide new and existing housing investment across the full spectrum, from young families to aging residents. Housing enables growth at every level. Additionally, investment in current housing stock will increase our tax base and make Fergus Falls more appealing to transplants. Update and reduce regulations in city code to allow existing homeowners to make improvements to better match current lifestyle trends, while also including design guidelines appropriate for our neighborhoods and encouraging positive curb appeal. Direction on housing is to identify 3 to 4 development sites concentrating on housing growth, not necessarily apartment structures right now. Implement a phased development approach for the Norgren property. Determine if making the changes to city code to allow for private utilities is more cost-effective and timely for this development than city infrastructure expenditure would be. Ultimately, if city infrastructure is deemed necessary, obtain grants or other funding sources to reduce the infrastructure costs. Explore infill projects and support the sale of city-owned infill lots for housing development. Engage public and private partners to support financing and strategic planning for housing. Aggressively apply for infrastructure grants to reduce the costs of infrastructure for housing projects, initially concentrating on the Stanton Avenue single-family development site. We should name a lead individual or group with the support of a housing task force to tackle the housing shortages as part of the overarching economic development strategy. Update large portions of the city code to allow for more flexible improvements of existing homes and for new development to be built with today's realities in mind. Work with financing partners to offer fix-it loan programs to help current homeowners access funds for improvement to current housing stock. Explore options to allow curbside cleanup cleanup week on an annual or biannual basis, as communities like Fargo, Moorhead, West Fargo, and Barnesville do, to encourage pride of ownership and curb appeal throughout our entire community and market the campaign to maximize results. Our fourth initiative is small business growth, retention, and transition. Our current reality is many Fergus Falls businesses operate quietly with little visibility, even sometimes until they close. Others lack the support, mentorship, or tools to grow or plan for transition. Community support can feel uneven. New entrepreneurs and startups aren't sure where to turn for help and guidance. An incubator mentality and energy for support of startups can be lacking here. Our opportunity is a proactive and relationship-driven business retention system that could help business owners feel seen, supported, and prepared. The tools already exist. What's missing is visibility, trust, and implementation that brings positive results for all businesses. Business support that is more purposeful in frequency and in content can result in measurable growth of industry. Our direction is to launch a business health check program with the SBDC, promote loan and incentive tools more clearly, offer workshops on relevant business topics such as transition planning, digital marketing, hiring, and retention. To do this, we should engage in a three-tiered partnership program with the SBDC on behalf of the city for small business growth and support over the next 3 years, with the hope of continuing this program into the future to meet the needs of new and existing small businesses. This separation of small business and startup support from the larger role of economic developer will allow that position to concentrate on growth that will have a greater impact on the overall tax base while utilizing existing strengths, programs, and relationships of the SBDC in our community. We do have a proposal, I'm not going to go too much into that, from Ian at the SBDC, and I think we're going to do that at the end, but there are 3 kind of proposal tiers that he's put together that we can look at, and that money would be matched by the SBA. Our 5th initiative is business-friendly infrastructure and readiness. Our current reality is Fergus Falls has struggled to attract new business or development due to the lack of shovel-ready sites and inconsistent communication around available programs and incentives. It is difficult to attract new business with limited incentive programs readily available in Minnesota versus our neighboring states. Our opportunity is that a new city staff position for economic development will allow for clear communication channels and increased visibility. With well-prepped sites and a pool of money for economic development activities, paired with maximized outside funding and creative approaches to attracting new investment, Fergus Falls can play off our assets to drive economic investment here. Promoting our easy access to multiple trunk transportation corridors, including I-94, 59, 210, and our proximity to I-29, the regional airport, and all Lakes Country has to offer, there's an ability to set Fergus Falls apart from other competitors for new investment. With updated marketing documentation, the city can be promoted to become an easy, welcoming place for economic investment. Our direction is to complete the industrial zone by obtaining grant funding for the needed infrastructure, create and promote a business resource guide outlining incentives, zoning, and contact points, identify commercial and industrial target groups for business recruitment based on what our geography and assets can offer, build on this work to create a targeted recruitment protocol and benchmarks for monitoring results and feedback, identify investment-ready sites by completing an inventory of vacant and available properties, and reach out to owners of property that is well-suited for potential development to bring them into the economic development conversation. Align staff around a coordinated intake and follow-up process. Form a network of business people and citizens involving new people in this process for different industry subsets to support the economic development staff in courting potential businesses and mentoring existing ones. Draw new involvement from our citizens in the economic development process through networking, and utilize the Rolodexes of the community and their knowledge to help facilitate cold calls for business recruitment. Identify a funding source to grow an economic fund that can be used as a revolving resource for development and recruitment to have a source of gap filling for financing needs when necessary. A potential funding avenue could be a portion of the liquor store fund after identifying if and how it would impact the overall financial health of the city, along with any impact on the taxpayer. Our 6th initiative is arts, identity, and placemaking. Currently, community pride and cultural vibrancy are present, but at times they can be underpowered. Arts, events, and local initiatives exist, but they aren't fully activated or visible citywide. Multiple initiatives coexist, but don't fully intertwine. Our opportunity is low-cost, high-impact placemaking and arts initiatives that can energize residents, beautify public spaces, and create the kind of identity people want to belong to. Our direction is to establish a micro-agent program or civic project fund, empower artists and residents to propose and lead creative ideas, celebrate civic action as part of the city's brand, commit to staff leadership time for the initial organization of a grassroots effort for 2 years to concentrate on citizen-led initiatives to excite, involve, and beautify the community, with the intent of a step-down staff leadership role after the startup phase. This could look like a weekly or semi-monthly get-together in a community room, with the group self-identifying passions and needs for Fergus Falls and working together to accomplish them. Similar groups have been successful in the past in Battle Lake. Detroit Lakes has encompassed the attitude of do cool things in its growth plan and has seen vibrancy around that approach. Let's find a vibe and an energy that our community can rally around together and involve all that have interest. Our seventh initiative is our riverfront redevelopment, or the Fergus Falls Gold Coast. Our current reality is that the Otter Tail River runs through downtown and holds immense potential, especially the old dairy site. But right now, the land along that part of the river is underutilized, disconnected from the city's identity, and not contributing to the tax base. Our opportunity is to transform that Gold Coast into a destination for housing, recreation, and small-scale commercial activity that could redefine the feel of this area. The ideas already exist, but now it's about unlocking them and acting towards a planned development. The direction to do this will take initiating a vision for the space. As the council learned at the work session in February, it is more viable to find a developer if the city has identified a rather specific plan for what they would like built. A well-thought-out, aesthetically pleasing PUD for mixed use for that site that maximizes the taxpayer's return on the land and grows the tax base should be the guiding principle of this development. Finalizing the trail project and railroad crossing work to allow for development of the overall site to move forward. Identify short-term activations, such as pop-ups, trails, and gathering spaces to build energy. Align with housing and placemaking priorities to initiate development in the next 1 to 4 years. RTC Action is our eighth initiative. Our current reality is the former Regional Treatment Center is a massive and symbolic property that looms large, both physically and emotionally. There's been study and conversation, but little movement. Our barriers are the size, the cost, and the public complexity of the building that makes action feel overwhelming. But we do have an opportunity. Something needs to happen. The building has a potential to be a difference maker for our tax base and our identity as a community. Reframing the project as a phased, community-backed initiative could break the cycle and spark momentum. Our direction is to revisit the master plan and across the board change the tone of dialogue and narrative around the Regional Treatment Center. The horseshoe that remains is viable, and our recent master planning process reinforced that. There are people in our community that have the contacts and the commitment to see this project through. Engage this group of citizens to partner with the economic development team and give them credence and support to find viable options for the building. Explore incremental activation while being mindful of the larger picture for development, rather than waiting for one big solution. Facilitate conversations about mixed use for the building that goes beyond housing to new industry and commercial applications that would be long-term economic drivers for growth and could make Fergus Falls a regional destination. Encourage some space for dreaming around the future of the historic building and how it can be an asset that we have yet to tap into. The significance of this property has the largest potential to change the economic outlook for the community of Fergus Falls and drive outside dollars into our city for every industry. We must ignite our staff and community members working on the reuse of this asset while embracing the reality that doing big things takes time, and we can't shy away from the process because of that. Our ninth initiative, and I promise there's only 10, is retail, restaurants, and more. Currently, citizens and visitors often gauge economic vitality by their presence or lack thereof of retail offering, restaurants, and amenities. Many who live here can't buy everything that their household needs in Fergus Falls and are forced to shop online or travel to neighboring communities that present more options. The mall site needs revitalization, and in general, businesses that are here need more traffic throughout the year. I will say the barriers here. Demographics also often dictate where certain businesses are located, and our demographics have been similar for an extended time frame. Many national chain restaurants, gas stations, and retail establishments have clear benchmarks that must be met to consider a community for expansion. Our opportunity is to identify locations for retail, restaurant, and amenity types of businesses while working on development plans for sites such as the dairy property, the mall, and numerous other vacant buildings as the first step to change the retail landscape. Taking steps in partnership with private investment to make these sites more business-ready should aid the process of attracting more options of our citizens' desire. Our direction is to work with Visit Fergus Falls to grow retail support from beyond our city limits. Continue to partner with the county with the redevelopment of the Westridge Mall site to allow more retail and restaurant sites with proximity to the interstate, which is vital in attracting these desirable businesses. Support our existing retail establishments by partnering with the Chamber of Commerce and other entities to increase foot traffic and local dollar turn within the city of Fergus Falls. Our 10th initiative is the shared vision and strategic alignment. Our current reality is Fergus Falls is full of passionate citizens, talented leaders, committed staff, and out-of-the-box ideas with capable organizations, but lacks a structure that brings them all together. The city has spent a lot of resources on plans and studies in the past, and the community is ready for more visible action around economic development and real results. Our barriers are, without an identified staffing plan and direction, efforts compete for attention and resources. Groups are working hard, but not always towards the same outcome or measurable goals. There are outside funding sources that are underutilized in our community, and these dollars are being granted to our neighboring cities. Our opportunity is a simple shared vision for economic leadership staffing that could align the council, staff, partners, guiding decisions, funding, communication, and ultimately outcomes. We need to commit to an aggressive engineering plan to have more projects ready to be matched with funding as sources become available. Through engineering and economic development work to staff, I don't know what I wrote there, development work to see staff get more grants and tax incentives for identified priorities to enable development progress. Our direction is to fully utilize available incentives and funding options for economic development in Fergus Falls while actively partnering with the county to match projects with funding that they have available. Some things that we think could be used for funding would be opportunity zone designations by the state and federal government. That's a 10-year period to encourage investment in our community, and actually all of Fergus Falls would be eligible for that. Community block grants, they're currently being used by the HRA, but they could also be accessed for downtown. Infrastructure grants for housing development, energy transition grants because of the Hoot Lake plant closure, community housing program partnerships with local lenders, TIF, tax abatement, federal EDA grants. These require engineering-ready projects oftentimes, and so we need to have projects ready for them on short turnarounds. State business development infrastructure grants for new and expanding business investment, historic tax credits for eligible properties, legacy grants from the state of Minnesota, and new market tax credits, and Bremer Bank locally works with those. Finally, we need to fully commit time to better understanding how to leverage incentive programs that can be helpful in economic development, especially beyond the programs this community tends to rely on to maximize positive outcomes quickly. Allow staff the time to prioritize taking the steps needed to pursue some of these more labor-intensive incentives that can benefit growth and projects here. The council has done a lot of talk about economic development and goals for the future of the community. It's time to hire and act. Through the current small group process and the economic development work sessions, priorities have been identified that will help guide the overall vision for the next steps of economic development for the community, and these can be used as a resource for budgeting, partnerships, and long-term initiatives. The council will need to be able to follow through with incentives for economic development that will ultimately grow our tax base, increase our workforce with living wage jobs, improve our housing stock, and show a long-term return on investment for the taxpayer. Our neighbors are reaping the benefits of 20-plus years of thoughtful, forward-thinking, incentivized economic development, and we need to as well. Let's grow Fergus Falls.
Good. No, I just think at the end we need to talk a little bit more. Obviously, we're going to have about 3 different aspects of what we're going to do for economic development in Fergus Falls, and I think they're all going to be 3 good ideas. We're going to come together with something good. But that's.
I believe Laurel did a very good job of going through what we came up with, and like all of the proposals, I think everybody's going to be looking at a person to work this area, and we need it, definitely need it. One thing I would like to mention is that a number of years ago, when we had economic development director, the person would sometimes offer things that had not gone through the council. So we need to have this person that we bring on board work with the council very closely so he knows what, or he or she knows what they can offer and not offer as incentives for them to come. Thank you.
And I guess one other thing I should add, we didn't really get in the presentation about dollar amounts, but we were probably between the SBDA situation and staffing and the department costs. I think we were in that 2 to 275 range for costs, because to get someone that's really good in economic development from the conversations I've had, I think we're probably going to be pushing a higher salary than maybe we anticipated.
And just one thing with the what's that?
SBDA.
SBDA, whatever it is, they'll match the funds, and they would want to work alongside with our economic developer to give them all the broad scopes of what's going on in Minnesota and what's available to us. And it's not the answer, it's somebody to assist. And I think the largest one is 15,000, and so we get 30,000, which would be a full-time year of them working with us, and we could use all their resources. So that's a good thing to look at too at the end, so.
And it's the same group that Greater Fergus Falls had been working with, so there'd be a continuum there with people that are already mentoring our existing small businesses and working with them.
With it. Yeah. So there's, it's kind of, and I wasn't called upon you on any questions for,
I think you can
we
handle
were
it.
going to do that at the end. Maybe you see as this is kind of sensitive, I'll let you, I'll let you do the slide. So, I mean, this is kind of obviously, Team 12 Economic Development, myself, Laura and Scott, and we met several times, and like everybody, obviously, there's kind of a little bit of kind of data historical, so, many of it is kind of similar, so we can skip fairly quickly over those. But basically, the goal ultimately is to increase the net tax capacity of the city. Currently, that sits at about 14.8 million. The overall is about 1.3 billion. That's split, about 50% in residential and about 32% in commercial and industrial. And then about 16% is in non-residential, which is predominantly made up of rental property. And there's about kind of a little bit less than 2% in agriculture and a little bit less in another category. And so I think, the goal is that we have a heavy reliance on residential for our property tax base. So when it comes to splitting the pie, 50% of it is going to our residents. Off the deed site, we too looked, and basically that economic development is pretty static. Or job growth is pretty static in the last kind of 9 years. Basically there's an increase in retail options, supporting Visit Fergus Falls to create campaigns to promote shopping, continue to work with Ottawa County on the mall development. And I think one of the things on that is that I don't think people realize how much we do have. And there's also a mindset here, where people, I think with the prevalence of online shopping, we have people going into our local stores, they try on for size, and then, they don't purchase from that store, and they leave the store and say, well, I'm going to go to Fargo and see if I can get it cheaper, or I'm going to look for it online. And that's a disservice, and, it's quite offensive. People have stores in town, that is their investment in the community. And, the cost to get in your vehicle and drive to Fargo, you can add that, you might get it in Fargo for $10 cheaper, but you spend $20 in gas. And I think, people need to kind of support our downtown, businesses, as well as all the other stores, and businesses in town. If we don't shop local, then people, those businesses just simply go out, and that's another vacant property where the tax burden comes on the rest of the people. So, and I think, we do need to increase housing stock, and utilize the infrastructure grant opportunities and to help reduce development costs. And that's kind of, one of the things with like the Stanton property. At the end of the day, we have that property essentially, there's about $100,000 that's got, at this point in time, that's city money residents in. The balance of that has come from state. Yes, we all pay into the state, our taxes, but if we don't take the money back out again, it goes to another community. And so that's kind of, an area where I think, we need to do sort of more of. We kind of identified then some priorities. They're not necessarily in order. I believe that the 116 corridor, which is basically from Ziegler to the ethanol plant, that is a great possibility for kind of some sort of free trade zone, opportunity zone, where we could. It's out of town. As kind of Al mentioned about being on the I-94 corridor, with multiple exits, getting on and off, that's appealing to a lot of people, and especially when it comes to trucks. So I think, that's an area that I would put as being kind of a more longer term, goal to get that developed. Obviously, we do have capacity in our current industrial park, but we looked at that, and it was about $2 million just to put in the infrastructure to access the balance of that. And that's a lot of money without any ultimate guarantee of anything in return. But again, there's potential of grant funding to do that. Obviously, complete the Stanton project, continue to work on the old dairy site. We're working on the trail now. We need to kind of get the rail crossings in place, and that accesses that, and obviously that would help on producing, tax revenue based properties in there. Downtown vacant spaces. There is an empty inventory. Yes, there's always going to be turnover. Obviously, businesses will come and go, but I think we have to have additional effort and energy, and I think we're seeing that with Visit Fergus Falls. I mean, Visit Fergus Falls has a budget of they have income of about $160,000 a year, and the focus is on Visit Fergus Falls. The focus should not be on beds in heads, and that has been generally the mandate for that group in the past. But the more people that physically visit Fergus Falls, the more likelihood is they're going to stay in a hotel at some point because they're going to see an event downtown. And I think with Rolando's efforts and energy, I think we're going to see more and more of that work being done. And we do have, a hotel that's going to open this summer that is downtown. And that's a tremendous opportunity for bringing people physically downtown into our neighborhood, which hopefully then will support some of the shops and restaurants that are down here. We basically then moved on to key performance indicators, and I think Laura's going to talk to that from her seat.
So KPIs, key performance indicators. So definitely something that has to be measurable. So we propose a performance-driven approach using the 1% rule. And aggregate marginal gains, our measurable targets are going to include, and you see them on there, that increase of net tax capacity, jobs, and commercial property tax, next 5 years, 5%, next 10 years, 10%. Obviously adjusted for the real growth versus the inflation on these KPIs. And these are just kind of simple, kind of core ones. Obviously, there's going to be additional KPIs as we go through this process.
I think in general, our goal was to have things that are measurable, so that if we're going to use taxpayer dollars, that we can show and demonstrate there is a return. And so that was kind of, and it's looking at something that's very simple to measure. The 1% rule, if you take 1% of your expenses, it makes a big impact. If you increase productivity by 1%, it has a big impact. Moving on to funding of the position, our thoughts were that we fund this through the Port Authority. We have to, if we're going to try to attract the right person for this job. I think, as Mike kind of stated in their presentation, this is a unique individual that we require and that we need, and we have to put forward a plan that is sustainable, so that that person coming to the city for kind of gainful employment knows that in the next kind of turn of either the city council or kind of mayor or position that it might get cut, we're not going to attract that right person. I feel that if we do it through the Port Authority and we set up a separate kind of fund within that for this position, it becomes much more sustainable. Equally, how do we pay for it? Reduce city tax levy by the equivalent amount, working with kind of the tax levy committee on other alignments within the city budget to kind of make that happen. I think, which has been, again, a common theme, is city should continue kind of its $50,000 pledge. That I think is the ticket, to entry, and so that it becomes accountable, and we can do it that way. And we estimate, the likely cost to be in the region of $200,000 to $250,000 per year. By the time you engage an employee, if it's in that circa of kind of the $100,000 range, you've got benefits of 35%, and then they've got some functioning activities that they need to do, in terms of communications, targeted marketing, administration, general expenses, insurance, travel, etc. And I think the biggest thing would be that we make it a sustainable funding mechanism, so that we can get that done. Position priorities, I think Laura was going to touch on that as well.
So this role that we're talking about is going to be laser focused on delivering outcomes. We talked about, the 1% rule. We believe it's extremely important for this position to focus 50% of their time on our current businesses, on the retention, the expansion efforts. Even Casey from West Fargo had said a majority of her time is focused on current businesses that are there. 40% on new business development, whether we're talking, industrial zones, we're talking airport, 5% on those community efforts like the housing and the childcare, and then the 5%, and this was Anthony, his time to dream, so allocated for visionary planning and innovation.
Everybody has to have time to dream, and I think that's kind of one of the things that we get so engrossed and so focused in our everyday kind of work life on what has to get done to keep something functioning. We often don't allow teams the time that to dream and just to be able to think about what could be done differently or how they could do something more efficiently. And sometimes out of those dreams, some of them might be kind of like bizarre, but there's good opportunities that come from that. So moving on to kind of structure of the position, our thoughts were that we actually, make this position a combination of Port Authority manager and slash EDA. The Port Authority then would become kind of like the EDA of the city. So, the Port Authority is a tool. It has a lot of things that it's got the potential to do. So it would be a vehicle that is somewhat outside the city, but within the city, and would allow, obviously, that opportunity for kind of the person to act. That obviously the position would still answer to the administrator. And then we do have the potential or the ability to add non-elected representation to the Port Authority board, and you could do that to the tune of three external individuals, and that might be a way of getting some different people on there with different expertise that they could bring to it. Obviously, we talked a little bit about utilizing the Port Authority for long-term funding mechanism. And then, the city obviously still does have the EIC, and again, that would probably be, the vehicle where we could have an independent advisory board of commissioners that could help guide economic development, and very similar to kind of like, Team One's, presentation, local business entrepreneurs, kind of engage people, appointed by the city, having more flexibility to negotiate. So that was kind of an idea. And then support of the position. We actually had a conversation with an organization called Golden Shovel Agency. They work with 30 communities in Minnesota. They've got they work in 42 states. They're based out of Little Falls, Minnesota. And initially, they would be able to create a community-supported set of priorities and help define the goals and strategies. And they can do that in two means. They can either do it remotely or they can do it, in person and hold some community-type meetings. And then, that was, if they did the community, the online version was about kind of $14,000, and the kind of in-person one was about 30,000, and that second one would take about 24 weeks to complete. But we felt that we should kind of have two trains on the tracks. One that's going down the road of hiring a person, and then another train on the track that's looking at engaging the community, and hopefully we can get an economic development person hired within that time frame of 24 weeks, so that they too can be engaged in that process and be engaged and energized by kind of the community to do what we want. And I think the phase two, which I think that would be something that would come out of kind of like the economic development person, but they have, similar to how SBDC had, they have simple programs that would help generate leads and help generate strategies going forward as just being another kind of mechanism for marketing. The next slide was incentive programs. I believe that we've never fully taken advantage of all state funding programs. I know obviously this is sometimes it kind of rubs people, but at the end of the day, it is our money, and it's how do we get some of our money back again to benefit our community, whether it's infrastructure grants, the energy transition grants. We feel that we should build the loan fund. Currently, the BDF controls about $2.3 million. Some of those funds are restricted on how they can be used, but our thought was to allocate 25% of the liquor store profits to a loan pool to build in a non-restrictive fund. Currently, obviously, the liquor store is subsidizing the taxpayer projects that happen. There was a chunk of money obviously went to like the splash pad. There's money that's gone to the golf course, but this would be setting aside a dedicated percentage that would go into a business revolving loan fund, so that we can kind of build that 2.3 million, because that 2.3 million, it doesn't grow. We lend it out, and it comes back again at low interest rates because that's part of our function. So there's no ability to physically grow that pot. And this would be a means of kind of adding anywhere between probably $150,000 to $250,000 a year to that fund. Then we have a slide on comprehensive strategic planning, and I think Scott is going to speak to that.
Over the years, the staff has often spoke of comprehensive plans in particular as a means to have opportunities to get, or at least seek, funding for various projects, that if the city were to have something on hand, prepared, ready to go as a comprehensive plan, that opens the doors for certain kinds of applications that we haven't been able to pursue. And so that's where this conversation came from, is if we were to work toward getting a comprehensive plan on board. Even the county doesn't have a comprehensive plan, but they do have a strategic plan, and theirs took them many months to put together. You can find it online and see how that was put together and how helpful it is in that particular case to really identify, what they're trying to do. In our case, as you look at what it might be, if it was a comprehensive plan, a full comprehensive plan can be kind of expensive to put together, but there could be value there that's certainly worth doing, and we would have to weigh the cost of that and the time involved. And yet, I think the reason Anthony wanted me to talk about this is in our conversations within our group, we saw the need for the why and the background needing to be in place basically before we would hire somebody. We could go and hire someone to be this economic development person, but then what are they going to do? What is telling them this is what we're setting out to do? And a comprehensive plan or a strategic plan would be the framework that they would be able to lean on as to what their whole point is and what they're trying to do. You can see some of the specifics there as far as capturing the vision of the community and providing those guiding principles, not only for the staff, but for the council. It's an idea that is got long-term length. It's something that stands for some time, but you update it as you go. You can get specific as you want. You can be general, but at least it's a way to have on paper what your goals and what your direction are, what it is. The things that Laura mentioned as far as measurable milestones can be built into that. And the idea of being comprehensive includes these many different topics: land use, housing, public facilities, utilities, transportation, quality of life, historical and cultural and environmental spaces. To address all of those things and just hire somebody and say, go for it and do all this good stuff without some document or some plan basically on paper, seems like it would be setting us up to fail. And it would be, in our opinion, a good way to go, to have something along these lines in place. And it would make it much more likely that an economic developer can succeed in their job and be much more successful as a city as a result. Anthony, are you leaving me to wrap this thing up?
Do we want to sell melons or melon?
We didn't talk about, how to fund that or whatever. We talked about just in general where this would help us. And I think that you've taken, you can take it from there.
Yeah. I mean, I think this was kind of like the comprehensive strategic plan was not something that would be inhibiting going forward on economic development today. It would be something that, we should look at, so that, we have a roadmap. And, and the fact that if we have some community engagement on it, it will make it, a stronger value to the document and would give some clarity as to where we want to go as a community, and would help, ultimately would help an economic development person. It would help a community development person in terms of where the city is going, short term and then long term, so that, it more defines what we want to try to be down the road. I kind of skipped over 2 or 3 of the incentive things in excitement to keep going, but the other thing that we talked about was alternative programs for kind of incentive, and for example demolition rebate, for just to cite kind of like one example, we've got 2 empty Burger Kings at this point in time. That's the one obviously going out on Pebble Lake. That's actually sits on a big lot. If the city, comped the actual landfill portion of demolition for that building, would that be an incentive? Yes, it's not a hard dollar incentive, but it would be an incentive to go back to a potential developer for that site, where just being able to say, well, the actual landfill portion of that was gone. And, I think that's where we kind of I think somebody said earlier, thinking outside the box. There may be other things that we can do like that, that would obviously, might be that tipping point to get that done. I think, the other thing was Otter Tail County funding programs. We've never used the county as a city, but that's maybe something that, we have to lean more on the county. We are the county seat. I would say that our relationship with the county has been very, standoffish, and I'm not blaming any individuals for that, but, they've done their thing and we've done our thing. And, we need to kind of engage those more. Tax increment financing, I mean, part of that, obviously, all government entities participate. Generally, it's for longer-term programs. But I think, we definitely need to define a policy and guidelines, both short and long term, because if we're going to have an economic development person, they need that rule book so that, when they cut a deal, I think Jim mentioned that kind of previously, the old EIC was suggesting and saying, well, they can get this done, but if they'd had, a defined guideline, that wouldn't have happened. And I think, Mike equally mentioned that too. And then obviously tax abatement, it's shorter term program. But other government entities have the option to participate or not. And, and that's kind of the, one of the differences is that, at least with TIF, obviously the county and the school district, participate with tax abatement. It would all be on the city. So then I think we have one last slide after that. And I think, the final thing is, do you want to sell lemons or do we want to sell lemonade? And do we want to add value to our city? And I think, that's kind of, I think all of the things that we've kind of been spoken about today is that we want to sell melonade. We don't want to sell melons. So with that, I'll return to my seat. So I think in general, I would say that we have way more agreed things than we do disagreed things. I mean, I kind of took some notes on kind of as people kind of spoke, and I think unanimously we all agree that we need economic development. I think we all agree that that person should be in-house. I think we all agree that there needs to be policies and guidelines about what incentive programs there are being offered. I think we have kind of everybody wants to have a vision, that for the future, and I think obviously we all know that we need it to grow, and maybe we have to help define that a little bit. I think the general was that an independent board of mixed individuals. I think everybody agreed on that. I think everybody agreed that we needed a funding shift. And I think most people were in that kind of range of 200 to 275,000 is what it's going to cost. We all agreed that it needs to be collaborative. I think overwhelmingly there's a passion to for the city and for the city growth. I think we all agreed that our location and gateway to the city is an advantage to us. I think you can add to that kind of obviously we do have rail, we do have kind of cheap, should I say, economical electric rates. And that's kind of that's another program that is potentially an incentive, is that most utility companies do offer different rates for startup organizations, and we have natural gas, and we have capacity on the natural gas line, so that's another positive. I think we all agree that there should be an element of housing. That was one thing that within our group, we didn't feel, and I should mention that housing, we would like to see sort of a separation more of duty, that the Port Authority economic development person should be more engaged in the kind of the business side of it, and that the community development should be more focused on housing. And so, that where at the moment that's kind of a mix. I think we all agree that there's benefits in reviewing city codes to see if we can, and ordinances to see if we can make it more palatable for people to come. We all agree that we need to maximize any third-party, funding sources that we can get. I think we all agreed communication is probably one of the biggest keys on how we're going to go forward, and utilizing those tools outside, whether it's SBDC or whether it's the county. And I think we all agree that we want to grow Fergus Falls. So I think it was good that everybody kind of was basically as close to being on the same page as we can be. So, does anybody have any questions of any group for points of clarification?
Your Honor, I'd like to make a comment if I'm allowed to.
Yep.
With it. I'm not a historian or a philosopher or anything like that, but there's got to be a quote out there. There was the worst of times and there was the best of times. And in my eyes, we were here 2 days ago, which was one of the difficult times for this council, maybe one of the worst of times. And not saying that is worse, but today, in my eyes, is one of the best of times. One of the best of times to see this council say the things that they said, talk about the things that they said, to hear it come from the mayor and each group. This is the type of day that it's an honor and a privilege, and really happy to be on the council with what I heard today. I think this council will always be divided on certain issues, but this council is very, very connected in where we're at today. The other thing I'd like to say, and I don't say a lot of things to other council members, I don't get the time to because I'm so busy, but I want to say to Councilmember Kildee, I have an undergraduate degree, master's degree, and a doctoral degree, and I speak at the hospital all the time. And I've never seen a presentation put together better on paper than what I seen today, ever. I could have never done it in my academic time. I could have, and I include Fish and Rachel as well, but she spoke in my academic time or in my speaking time, see something put together so well. And the effort that went into that, I know it was immense. I think, Your Honor, if you're looking for your vision for the city, I think all you got to do is just watch this video today and listen to Miss Kildee and what she said and where she went with everything. And I don't think you'll be far off of your vision and what you're looking for the city.
Mark?
In closing, I've watched this council over the last 4 or 5 years, and I agree with the council person. In 100 days, this thing has, just metamorphosized from what it was to now have an open conversation in a chamber on economic development. Number one, I agree. It proved that this council isn't divided. Number two, it was never talked about in the past. And number three, we finally have a vision and a focus on this. I'm proud to be here, proud to be on this train. So very rewarding. Thank you.
Scott?
I'd like to add a couple things. First of all, give a shout out to the Greater Fergus Falls and the work that's been done over the number of years that they were in business. I think that we, as a city, got a very good return on our investment. And although they've been subject to a lot of criticism lately, I think that for what we spent, we really got a good return on our investment. And I think that wherever that organization goes from here, as it has been told to us, I mean, they're not closed, but we have yet to see just exactly where that organization will go. But I want to say thank you to those who were involved with Greater Fergus Falls and point out that I think that we've got lots of good things that we can see that were done there. As we talk about the future of the city and wanting people to find a way or find a reason, see the vision to be here, one of the things that we've talked about in the past is giving people a reason to move here, it's often more than just, this particular tax abatement on this particular land or this particular whatever. If this is a place that people want to live, we're going to win the competition over some other place if it's a better place to live here for a number of reasons. And the numbers of reasons can be, we've got great schools, hospitals, libraries, parks, splash pad, the river, the other access that we've got to various things here. And I think that we did have, for the last several years, a growing interest in growing those amenities, growing those things that make this a great place to live. And over time, as people see why this is a great place to live, there's good reason to then want to be here. And by starting with the businesses that are already here, as we had mentioned in our presentation, focusing on at least 50% of the effort on businesses that are here, expansion and growth of those, you're not having to convince somebody that this is a great place to live. They're already here. So let's work with those folks in a good way to expand what they're doing, and we'll see some terrific results there. And again, a good return on the investment, because it costs a whole lot less to work with what you've got than to completely start from scratch with someone new. And the one last thing I'd say is all of these things that we've talked about can die in this room if nobody hears it. And when we had a communications director who was getting the ball rolling for letting people know about things and was fairly effective and growing in that effectiveness, I believe, for being able to find the ways to get the word out to people, that's been a little more difficult lately. And with each of the department heads having to kind of tell their own message, I think it ends up falling pretty heavily on the leadership and the staff to try and bring a cohesive message out. And we didn't go into this in our economic development discussion, even in our group. This is just me talking now. But I think that as we look to hire somebody for economic development, we really need to also be considering how we're going to handle communications. And I think that's an important piece. And the last thing that I guess that Anthony, you didn't mention was not only did we look at hiring a specific person, but we looked at hiring a group, an agency, so to speak, where we would maybe have a greater depth of experience and capability to help us do these things. And that's something we can talk about more further. There might be more opportunities for us to get more for our money with an agency than with a single individual, but that's all I want to say about that at this point. But thanks, I think this has been a good exercise, and I look forward to the next steps.
Anybody else? No, Jim?
Yeah, I think that this worked out well. I mean, we have 3 different groups, 3 people in each group. We didn't talk to each other. I mean, the groups did their own thing. And when it all comes down to it, we all pretty much have the same idea of what we want to do without communicating between one another. And I think it's great that we've gotten this far. I've been on the council a long time, and I don't know that it's any other time we would get together like that and come up with the same type of outcome. We all feel we need somebody to work this. And I think it was a good exercise. Thank you.
Lauren?
I just want to thank all of the council members that took their time and really participated to this. That I appreciate that. I think everybody did a phenomenal job. We have a lot in common. There are some small differences that, or maybe opinion, and I'm like, oh, I could see where that might be able to work into a larger plan. So this was great. I mean, and I just thank everybody for participating.
Lauren?
I would echo that. I'm not going to take time and repeat that. I know everyone has places to be this morning. I do think that we have a gap right now, even if we look at moving forward with hiring an economic development director, which we need to. We have small businesses right now that we could be very easily moving forward with a service agreement with the SBDA. And it's a shared foundational kind of engagement plan. And I don't even know if going in on tier 1 is the most logical when you look at bang for the dollar and what you get. I guess I would encourage between staff and council to review those couple of options. And I think that's something that we have money in our budget for, that we could move forward with continuing that partnership sooner than later. Because we do have some gap going on between the pause on Greater Fergus Falls and hiring someone in-house. And I think we've all talked about that in-house person really needs to grow the larger tax base. So I do think finding a way to service entrepreneurial startups, work with incubator type things and small businesses is an important gap that we as a council have the opportunity with currently budgeted money to move forward on sooner than later. And we have a ready and able partner with current connections with these groups.
Anthony, what do we do next? I mean, obviously, we all had great ideas. We do the funding of the the director, we do work on our vision, we work on them together. I mean, that's my question, what I should start, where are we gonna get the funding? I don't, is your budget meeting, or your tax levy meeting started yet, or?
Well, we were meant to have one this morning.
Okay.
I think it-
So I think if we,
right now.
at 9 o'clock.
We're in it.
So
We're in it.
I think that we need to look forward to, yes, we all decide we're gonna have a director. So how much we're gonna pay, how we're gonna find one, what we're gonna do, but also, if they're gonna come in here, we have to have our vision together.
Correct.
First day in, if we don't have that vision together, it's a waste of money. And so I don't know where we're gonna go, but I know those are two priorities right now, how we're gonna fund it, how much we're gonna pay it, and the vision. So that's kind of where I wanna work.
Mike?
I think I said all I needed to say.
No. Al?
Everybody else said it?
Good. I mean, I think, coming back, that I think ultimately, we need, based on, we're gonna ultimately need council action, physically how we go forward. I think, as you say, the funding piece is the first one. How we're gonna fund it. Obviously, this year, we have approximately, I think, technically 50,000 that was allocated to,
There's 70.
and then there
There's
was,
70,000.
and then there was kind of, was it 20 or 25 that was?
20.
20.
So we have 70,000. We can look at, obviously we've got some monies saved, from not having hired a communications director, and obviously, we've been short on a engineering director, so we might be able to scrape some of those funds to kind of do a budget, an entry to kind of move some of those funds to go into economic development.
I'm sure that's gonna be part of your conversation today.
Yeah, on basically to the short term to get through the end of this year, and then basically we would have to obviously allocate funds in the 26 budget in its clean department place. So I think, basically maybe, a combination of the tax committee and the, I mean, HR could come back and say, right, well, we can bring this much money back to the table to fund this for this year, and then, but I think, there's kind of a few questions, it's like, where we're gonna have to end up agreeing. And the other thought is that we have kind of a 2-3 person group that ultimately, works on economic development and basically takes all 3 presentations and brings them into one. And I think that would probably be, phase 1 is take the 3 presentations, blend them into one. As Laura said, everybody's got this. I think we have got probably 75 to 80% of things. Everybody's on the same page. We bring the last 20% in. I think, as you say, whether that's a port authority employee, a city employee, it's like, can we agree on where that sits?
What if we take one person from each group and the mayor?
And that was
Yeah.
kind of what I was thinking. So,
I guess I did have more words. I
You-
guess in me. Yeah, imagine that. Imagine that.
and then we
you
have
know?
to come up with a hiring plan.
Yeah.
The job description and the hiring plan.
I think one thing, just looking at it, and I don't want to harp as business and not take anything down on what we have today, but there's a lot of times that you can move to acquire the position and move the vision at the same time
Yep.
until they come together.
And-
So
and
as long as you're with that, yeah.
And I think we need to do that.
And then the other thing, I think, just to couple what you said that I hadn't thought about before, if you take one member from each of the 3 groups, and if they can meet privately to hammer some things out, that's a great way to take
Yep.
this forward. Because then you're representing the 3 in your
your group and you can hammer it out. And I think it won't take long and it'll be there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we did have that conversation in our group. The importance of if we're going to be doing a strategic plan was that we still needed to get that hiring process started so that they could go in, tandem together. Yep.
Your Honor, in closing, I would recommend that you have this group come together again. And if you will, take their programs that they've addressed today, compare it to the other ones, give us the good, give us the ones that they're not too included, and have an open discussion now that we know what the ground rules are.
Yeah.
That would be very beneficial for me.
I mean, I would say if anybody's got time, maybe we can do it first thing this afternoon.
Do what?
Do you have time today?
Sure.
Mike, do you have time today?
I apologize, Your Honor, I don't have time.
Right.
I hate to say that to you, I really do.
Yeah.
This is,
Um,
from a business
we
standpoint.
can talk afterwards and find a time.
Yeah, I think we need to digest what we received, and if I could get the spreadsheets or a few other presentations by email, that would be wonderful.
Yep.
I was just gonna say, I will send all the presentations out and come on the city website so the community has them as well.
Yep. So, with that, thank you.